A close-up of a distorted eyeball with washed-out white and blue center and cloudy patterns. Repeatedly, it shifts and blinks. Darkness falls. Back of a person wearing a backpack.
Miss May?
Doctor?
You can just open that door and then put your things down behind the door to your right.
They open a door to a small room with a chair.
So, over here.
Yeah, that works perfectly.
Great.
Now, if you'll just sit down and take that chair, I need to place a couple of contacts in your eyes, and that's going to allow us to take photographs of your retinas. So if you'll just tilt your head back for me and try to keep from blinking.
Huge green eyes stare upwards. Blinking.
Sorry.
It's okay. I know it doesn't feel great. I just need you to keep them in long enough for us to take this photo.
Eyes wide open. Blinking.
It's okay. Third time's the charm.
Eyes open. Whiteness. Eyeballs staring.
Great. Now hang tight so I can take these out. Okay.
Blinks.
So now I'm going to have you put on this blindfold while I get a few things situated here. We need to take photos again to see how your retinas adapt to darkness, which means that we have to sit here in total darkness to give them time to adjust.
They put on the blindfold, then release their long hair from the right side. The left side is shaved.
Okay, can you see anything?
Nope.
Great. I'll turn out the lights then and we'll begin.
Darkness.
I'm locked in a small, dark room. You know, it's really more like a closet. I take a second to remember my way to the door, just on the off chance things should start to feel unsafe. Who am I in this space between sighted and blind? Will I still be the same person when I leave? I relax into the ambiguity of darkness.
The darkness has cloudy edges and small spots. It shifts slightly throughout, like waves on a shore, or someone trying to steady themselves, or the twinkling of stars.
The warmth of his breath startles me, and I catch my own breath in the hopes that I might disappear.
At times, the darkness holds murky figures. Sharp squiggles of light.
Just 15 minutes to go, ma'am.
In faint light, they raise their blindfold.
I considered correcting him, but decided against it. If I had spoken up, then I would have made both of us uncomfortable. Whereas by staying silent, only I was left to stew. Ma'am, why is politeness always gendered? Step right this way, miss. Oh, there was a course evaluation that said I dress far too informally for someone who insists on being called doctor instead of miss. Now, I suspect many people think I prefer doctor because I'm pretentious, when in truth, it's just because it's the only prefix I can use that doesn't bind me to one gender. I mean, I guess there's also professor, but that depends on my job. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
They pull down the blindfold, and cloudy darkness returns.
I've caught myself thinking a lot about Tiresias, the crip, gender non-binary prophet that Oedipus turned to when he couldn't figure out how to end the plague destroying Thebes. At least in the version of the myth that I know, Tiresias went blind as a punishment for getting caught watching Athena bathe naked. And then, boys will be boys, and locker room talk meant that Zeus offset Tiresias's blindness with the gift of prophecy. Prophet, see, prophecy. Anyway, before all of that, Tiresias had been out for a walk when he stumbled upon and struck a pair of snakes while they were mating, which also caused the gods to punish him. That time, they turned Tiresias into a woman. I think it was 7 years later, definitely after she had had children. I'm not sure the myth ever says what became of them. But after the children, Tiresias returned to the same spot, again struck a pair of snakes in the act of intercourse, which reversed the curse and returned Tiresias to manhood. Tiresias held a lot of power in the spaces between binaries. For example, Hera and Zeus turned to Tiresias for his insight and to answer a question over which gender has the most pleasure during sex. I give them this. They at least valued those with lived experience, and for Tiresias, the answer was women. Not only Oedipus, but also Creon and also Dionysus turned to Tiresias for his insight, even though they knew he lived in blindness. But always, Tiresias only held power until the moment that he spoke his truth. As soon as he spoke up, in what most blind people can kind of recognize as a traditional pattern, Tiresias, when he spoke up, was accused of being a fraud, seeking power, and returned to the margins of the story.
The dimly lit room.
Oh, sorry. I guess I forgot to turn that off.
Wow, you're popular.
No, I forgot to turn it off because it never normally rings. It's probably my parents. They knew I was coming here today, and I think they're a bit concerned. Let me try and turn that off.
No, you're going to have to stay put. I can't turn on the lights or we'll have to start over.
Well, I think I could find my way in the dark. I've been working on those skill sets.
Just stay put, please. We've just got a few more minutes.
Fidgeting, then pushing forwards. They settle into the chair. Brush hair off face. Intertwine fingers.
Want to hear a joke?
Sure.
How do you punish a blind professor? I'm surprised you don't know this one. You rearrange the furniture. Bet you didn't see that coming.
I guess you could say I was blindsided.
Nice. Oh. How short-sighted of you.
Now, don't give me the stink eye.
Oh, I'm not. I'm staring daggers.
I see. Well, I'll keep an eye out for them.
Seeing is believing.
Hey, even a blind pig finds a truffle now and again.
They fidget. Then slouch.
So what do you do for a living?
Oh, I'm a professor.
Yeah? What do you teach?
Theater.
Cool. Sounds fun. Do you act?
No, I'm a director.
Ah, you have the vision.
That's what they said anyway.
History has its eyes on you.
I'm sorry?
Talk less. Smile more.
Never let them know what you're against or what you're for. What happens next?
The revolution.
No, I mean for me here today.
Oh, well, after we take this next set of photographs of how your retina's adapted to darkness, it'll be just a little while until the doctor will read them, and then she'll give you a diagnosis.
The dreaded diagnosis. Does it make a difference?
Depends.
On what?
I'll leave that to the specialists.
It's just, my research shows there's no treatment, so...
Well, at least you'll have a name for it.
I guess.
And who knows what they'll discover in the future.
They raise their blindfold in brighter light.
After I had failed the how many fingers am I holding up test, and my regular eye doctor had told me what he thought was going on, but before that moment there, in the retinal specialist's office, waiting on an official diagnosis, I started researching. I am, after all, an academic. On one of my journeys down a rabbit hole, I found the following quotation. It comes from an American monthly magazine written in 1830. It said, "The blind are the most unfortunate. They are condemned to a prison of clay, dark, lonely, and desolate. In the midst of a world which is full of light and glory and beauty, of which they continually hear, and after some perceptions of which their souls must pant in vain, with all the sickening agony of unquenchable desire." Clay.
They pull down their blindfold and cloudy darkness returns.
Clay is an odd choice for the prison of blindness, if you think about it. I mean, clay comes from the very earth that supports us, from the moment we are born until the second we die, at which point it works to reclaim us for itself. Yeah, clay can be formed into objects with clear visual structure, but we typically give those names like brick or pottery or ceramics. Clay is the word we use for the wet, malleable substance from which those other things are formed. A clay wall is sturdy, but it's not impenetrable. To work in clay is a full body experience.
Raising blindfold.
If you don't believe me, I encourage you to check out the 1980s film Ghost. It starred Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, and Whoopi Goldberg. You know what? On second thought, don't check that out. Its racial politics are really problematic.
Pulls down blindfold. Darkness.
I studied physical theater at Dell'Arte International, and when I was there, we spent a lot of time exploring what are known as the four elements, one of which is earth. We were told to imagine ourselves buried up to the waist in clay. and to really feel what it felt like to try and push through that, lean into all of the resistance it offered. And there we were in a large room, panting, panting. But it was never in vain. Clay is visceral. When I was a competitive distance runner, one of my favorite places to run were the red clay pine forests of Alabama. The way they smelled after a hot, steamy summer rain was divine. And then when it dried, the clay would leave traces of me behind wherever I went. Maybe that's why my advisor hated it so much. I remember a conversation we had when I told him that I had accepted a position teaching theater at Auburn University. And he told me he had grown up miserable in Alabama. For some reason, he associated that with the red clay earth. I didn't ask what memories it brought up. It's none of my business. But I suspect they were buried deep, like the cotton picked by generations of enslaved people forced to labor in those same clay hills. You know, labor, that's the only thing white people can be counted on to value in people from the global South. Following the Civil War in the US, the ability to work independently was essentially required for any Black person who hoped to achieve the emancipation they were legally guaranteed under the 13th Amendment. Those who were unable to withstand the most grueling forms of physical labor, things like laying railroad ties, well, they were left behind in a form of perpetual illegal slavery. It makes me think of Hannah. Hannah was blind, Black, and enslaved. Freedom made it to Hannah's plantation during her lifetime, but her blindness meant that she remained laboring in the garden and the home of people who somehow believed they owned her. Her labor sustained them, yet her disability meant that nobody cared that she was never free. You know, as a blind woman, given current perceptions of blindness, I suspect Hannah was perceived as incapable of surviving freedom, instead deemed lucky just to have a place to live. Lucky to live.
They raise their blindfold in faint light.
Here in the US in the 21st century, millions of Americans are caught up in our prison systems. It is still perfectly legal to pay them nothing and to return all the profits from the labor that they are forced to do while imprisoned, for that profit to go to those in the for-profit companies that house them. Those who are incarcerated are disproportionately Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, and they are disproportionately disabled. Their disabilities, often either caused by incarceration, I almost said enslavement, because it's basically a contemporary form of enslavement. And those disabilities are either caused by it or used as justification to lock people up. For disabled Americans not caught up in our prison systems, well, less than 50% of us work, and it is still perfectly legal here to pay pennies on the hour for our labor. Worldwide. And what is appearing to be a perpetual pandemic, we have witnessed the intentional sacrifice of people with disabilities, of their lives and their well-being for the comfort and productivity of people deemed more valuable from their societies. And then millions of those have also become sacrificed, losing their own quality of life because they have been pushed back into business as usual and normalcy that benefits capitalism and those in power. I wonder how different things would be if we, like the Greeks, had at least belatedly listened to our own blind prophets. What if we had listened to people like Asian American disability rights activist and self-proclaimed cyborg oracle Alice Wong, who all this time has been exhorting us to place the needs of our most vulnerable, to place our community's health and well-being at the center of our decision-making, and reminding us that when one of us slips and falls through the cracks, we all suffer and lose something. Can you name what you have lost?
They pull down the blindfold. Darkness. Faint light.
Okay, we are almost done. Just have to get those contacts in your eyes again, take the photo, and then you can go back to the waiting room. So let me get the equipment ready before you remove the blindfold, okay?
Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
I guess I have to be.
They remove the blindfold and reveal an eyeball staring upwards. Whiteness. They sit, no blindfold, in brighter light.
Not long after that diagnosis, my husband and I decided that we should take advantage of the sight I do still have, and we celebrated over 2 decades of marriage by hiking the Haleakala crater, which looks a lot like I imagine Mars might look. The trail we took started at 10,000 feet, and that meant that all we could see for miles were lava rocks, sand that had started as lava and somehow nestled beneath us in the nooks of mountains or clouds. The climb was exhilarating and terrifying. I'd get distracted by the amazing vista and forget that I can't tell the difference between upright boulders and crushed rock. And so there I'd be, wandering around, looking off into the distance when I would catch my foot on a boulder, stumble, swear, take a deep breath, and remind myself to get my head out of the clouds and watch what I was doing. In one of the moments when I was paying particularly careful attention to where I was going, I noticed that one of these brilliantly green and iridescent cactuses that had been dotting the landscape, this one had burst into a cascade of bright red flowers. And because he couldn't leave me too far behind, it was really easy for me to pull my husband over so that we could admire it together. Following our hike, we discovered that those cactuses were endangered Haleakala silver swords, and they only grow in that location. Silver swords put between 15 and 90 years of labor in. And then if they survive that long, they burst into those beautiful flowers and then immediately die. The chances of seeing one in full bloom are slim to none. And that gets me thinking. If we hadn't had to slow down and listen to each other and pay careful attention to our surroundings and our environment, would we have missed it?
Fade to black. Awaiting Tiresias. Title screen. Distorted image of an eye. Creative team. Author, performer, director, Heather May. Performer, Kelly Walker. Original compositions and sound design, Kelly Walker. Video design, Heather May. Technical director, stage manager, Kelly Walker. For more information, scan the QR code or go to drheathermay.com.